As I said at the top of the show, a new report was issued just this week by the Public School Forum, the group that presents this show, of course, with 6 other education groups across the South. The principal author of that report, Alan Richard, is joining us here today. We've got a copy of the cover of the report on the screen right now. Thank you for being here, Alan. Sure. Alan is a veteran national education writer. I guess we're veterans when we get old. Right. You wrote for Education Week, the Washington Post, the Hechinger Report. You're also a native of South Carolina, so you do know something about the South, but very little about good barbecue. Is what I'm going to say.
Right. The other Carolina.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So, tell me about this report. Sort of what was it about? Sort of why was it done in the first place?
Well, as folks just saw on their screens, it's called Accelerating the Pace, the Future of Education in the American South, and it calls for all of the southern states to make a new commitment to improving education. As you said, the Public School Forum of North Carolina and 6 similar organizations across the South together published this report and saw the need for greater action by our states.
So you spent, I think, about a year talking with people all across the South in all of these states. So what did you find as far, so what did you find overall?
We found the South has made a lot of strides in improving education. Anybody with kids in school will tell you that they study things at a much, advanced studies.
I've seen it with my own daughter.
Right, at a much earlier age than we did, since we're veterans.
Right.
There's lots more improvement to be made. One thing we found across the South is a lot of consensus, and I was surprised how many of the same things I was hearing across the region from parents, students, policymakers, educators about what our priorities need to be. And one thing that stood out to me too, in just doing some research for the report, is that achievement gaps are either closing too slowly for some groups of students across the South, or they're not closing at all. And in fact, in North Carolina, in 4th and 8th grade reading, I believe, for students from low-income families, the achievement gap between 2005 and 2015 has actually grown. So the achievement levels for students from low-income families are actually grown worse in comparison to more affluent.
No, just a quick definition. I think our viewers all know this. When we talk about achievement gap, and of course at the forum we like to talk about it's an opportunity gap because there are reasons why a lot of kids don't.
That's right.
But what are we exactly talking about? We're talking about differences in test scores between groups?
That's right. There's something called NAEP, or the Nation's Report Card. That's a national exam that a group of students in each state takes, and so it's sort of a national barometer of student achievement. And that's where we get this achievement gap data, the difference between averages and scores.
All right, so let's move into what the key issues and priorities. We're also going to talk about the education poll of the South in a minute, but first just tell me what the priorities are. We actually have them on the screen. This is from the report, the sort of the main priorities.
Well, as you can see on your screen, the first was that we need better talent and more support for our teachers and principals. You know, the South has actually slipped when it comes to average teacher salaries. But it's not just about pay, it's also about support and helping professionals grow with training and mentoring and that sort of thing, keeping good people in the field. Another one is that today's students are a lot different than those in the past. A majority come from low-income families across the South and in our country, in fact. And that rate is very high.
And in North Carolina, we are majority minority now.
That's right.
In North Carolina, that just crossed over a couple years ago, so that's different.
So today's students are very different than a few generations ago, so they need different types of support, sometimes for family issues, emotional health, that sort of thing. Students told us across the South that they're sometimes still met with very low academic expectations.
Okay.
and predictions for how they'll do in the future. The third thing was just that transition from high school into college and career training. Not everybody needs to go to college, but unfortunately in the South, we still have a shortage overall of adults with 4- and 2-year degrees, and also with the career certifications that can really land you a good job these days. And then the fourth priority is funding, which I know is very much on the table here in North Carolina. Money's not everything, but it does matter, and it's pretty obvious when you visit some urban and rural school systems that there are lots of differences in the quality of education.
Well, I want to talk, for the last part of our conversation, the education poll of the South was part of this report. This to me was both surprising and encouraging. Tell me, we've got a couple of slides that are going to pop up on the screen that talks about what you found.
Good. We asked 2,200 registered voters across 12 southern states, including North Carolina, for their views on improving education. And it was surprising to me. 3 out of 4 Southerners recognize that there are differences in the quality of education that students receive across their states, and actually 77% or more, a higher rate of North Carolina voters recognize those differences. And then even more surprising to me is that about 85% of Southern voters say we need to do something about it.
Right.
And the figure for North Carolina was 88%.
Yeah, that's what we've got on the screen
Yeah,
right now.
88% of voters.
And in North Carolina, it is a state role and largely are where they can make a difference, right?
And in addition, 84% of Southern voters said they actually supported changing how their state pays for schools to address these issues more effectively. And that rate in North Carolina was 86%. So there's a lot of consensus among voters and by political party, racial background, location, age, gender, on all of these issues. And that was heartening to me as someone who has covered education in the South for a long time.
So what is your takeaway? I mean, when you look back, both considering the achievement gaps and issues from the report, but also the polls, where do you end up on it?
Well, we're all in this together. These issues are bigger than all of us, and they're certainly bigger than the political divisions of our day. You know, having good teachers, making quality early childhood available for kids. Now, there are different philosophies about how to go about that, but these priorities, support for students, these should rise above the political bickering of the day. These are ingrained in our society and will dictate the future economically and socially of our states.
Well, so check out, we got the show on the screen. We've got the members of the Columbia Group, the organizations that were part of it. You can find the report. We'll have a link to it on ncforum.org. There's also a website that has all the materials, and that is
acceleratingthepace.org.
Yeah, and look for the commercial breaks. Now, Alan, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Enjoyed working with you on the report, and good conversation today, so thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
When we come back, we're going to be joined by former Senator and State Board Chair Howard Lee. But first, see if you can answer this question. Which groups of Southern voters support changing their state's school funding to ensure more fairness between wealthy and poor communities?